Thank you. So actually yesterday I went out for dinner and drinks with a great group of people, and actually Steve, I don't think he's in here, is probably still sleeping out his hangover. But he gave me a great idea. He said, like, you have to address and eliminate the elephant in the room. You have to embarrass the elephant before the elephant can embarrass you. And to be clear, the elephant in the room today is my dad. My dad is, for the first time, he's in the audience, seeing me on stage. Hi, Dad. To be clear, you're the only person in here that cannot ask questions. The rest of you, feel free to ask me anything you like. We're going to start. We are only going to talk about social heuristics and social dynamics today. And to be honest, that's a little bit out of my own comfort zone as well. As Maxime said, this is the second time that I'm going on stage just talking about the social side of software development. I have been a victim of these social heuristics for years, and the same goes for you, but for me that resulted in the fact that every time I went on stage at a tech conference like this, I felt the urge and the need to include a technical part in my session, because I'm talking at a tech conference, so I must include a technical part, right? So you see, this is out of my comfort zone, and not just for that reason, but also because there is actual research about common fears of people, and second on that list is death. First on that list, and I'm not kidding you, is public speaking. So most people would rather die than go through this excruciating torture that I'm going through at this point. And yet here I am. So I figured if I want to do this, if I want to survive this, and if I want to have fun while doing so, then I should talk about something that I truly love, that I'm passionate about, that I want to tell the world. And if I'm really honest with myself, then what truly drives me is how we are wired, how we operate as human beings, how human interaction shapes everything that we do, how social heuristics and social dynamics affect both our systems and our systems of work. So that's what we're going to talk about today. If you are not up for that, if you expect something technical, you can still leave. I won't be offended, just do it now. And for the rest of you, we are going to talk about this. So I lost that security blanket in the form of the technical part in my session, so I added another security blanket because I felt I deserved it. I am not a kick-ass developer. You guys are probably all way better developers than I am. I do not speak technology fluently, and I am a social scientist. There, I said it. That doesn't mean that you cannot trust me or believe me, everything that I'm saying, everything that's on the slide, it's all backed up with data, it's fact-based, and you can believe me, trust me, take pictures safely, and quote me on everything that you want to do. There was actually another point on here, but I decided to delete that after I was discussing this talk with one of my trusted advisors and one of my friends. The fourth point actually said that you probably won't learn anything new on a technical level today. And when I was discussing this talk with him, he kind of got upset. And he was like, why is that on there? So I tried to explain that to him. And he was like, yeah, but everything you do, everything you study, everything you do at your clients has everything to do with tackling complexity in the heart of software development. And apparently he was phrasing some guy. Not really sure who that was, but... So he got upset, and I was sitting down at that point, and he was standing up, so it was kind of intimidating for me. But he had a good point, because I strongly believe that we can get better developers, and we can become better architects if we understand how these social dynamics and social heuristics are affecting both our systems and our systems of work. So I decided to leave it out. So my goal here today is to make you think, to challenge you on how you are working as teams, how you are collaborating, how you are making decisions, how you are doing what you're doing, and why you're doing what you're doing. And I have had the pleasure to be walking around in this IT world for a few years now. And I remember when I saw this image, this visual, this data. And I was like, okay, if this is the situation, if this is the thing that we have to keep sustainable, then we might want to make a few changes in how we're working, because this is not a sustainable situation. And I think that when I walk around at clients and talking to people about this, I very often hear things like IT isn't living up to its promises, or the business is throwing all these insane requests at us, and they don't even know what they want, and they want everything done yesterday. Sounds familiar, probably. So what I'm hearing is that we have a problem. And the problem is that we are spending way too much money on IT, and it's still not working properly. What we want is faster delivery and shorter time to market, excellent CI/CD pipelines, cost reduction. And what we need, well, obviously we need more developers. I mean, that's the solution to everything. But we also need microservices and serverless architectures and everything else we heard at the latest conference we attended. So probably after today, we need something else. But the truth is, I hear people talking about symptoms when I'm hearing them talk about this. These are symptoms. These are not the actual root causes of our problem, because in the end, The truth is that software development is a technical activity conducted by human beings. It's about human interaction. We are designing software for humans and not for computers. And I believe that almost every technical issue that we encounter is a consequence of organizational issues, and that we tend to mistake these organizational issues for technical issues. And as a consequence, we are treating and discussing symptoms, and we are not discussing the root cause of our problems, which we should be doing. So I tried to translate that into the logic of the previous slide. And then I think that the truth actually looks a little bit more like this, that the actual problem that we're facing is that we don't listen to understand, we listen to reply. And that what we actually want is the right people talking about and working on the right things at the right time. And what we need for that, and obviously we need a lot of things, but I only have 45 minutes. So we're going to talk about shared sense of reality, understanding of how we're making sense of the world, and understanding of social heuristics. I think this is actually a lot more close to the truth. Because in the end, like I said, it's about people. It's about the people who create the code. And we tend to focus more on the technical side of things because it's in our comfort zone and we feel good about it and we can measure it and we can track progress and we can do everything we like and we're comfortable with there. But I think that communication is a skill too, and that we can get better at this whole organizational effectiveness thing. We can master it, we can treat it as a skill, and we should treat it as a skill because that will make us social technical developers or architects or professionals. And that's the dream, of course, because in reality, I very often see us coming up with brilliant solutions like this, something I like to call the vicious cycle of unsustainable software development. This is not exaggerated. This is what I see a lot in organizations. But this, sorry to break it to you, but this is not going to solve our problems. Yes, there are lots of technical issues in here, plenty of technical problems, trust me, but the root cause of all of these things is not technical. I think it has a lot to do with balancing the social technical complexity here. Throwing more developers at the problem, that's never a good idea. So what I think that we should do, we should try to suppress our instincts sometimes. Instead of just start writing the code right away, focusing on the problem, on solutions and technologies, we should try to take a step back and see the problem, define it, formulate it before we jump to conclusions and solutions, before we follow our instinct and start writing the code. So I think this is what we should try to do. First solve the problem and then write the code. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And as I said, I think we need 3 things for that. And of course, we need more than 3 things for that, but 3 things in this talk. We need a shared sense of reality. We also need to understand how we are making sense of the world, and we need to understand how social heuristics are affecting everything that we're doing. And when I'm talking about heuristics, I am not talking about the heuristics that we come up with ourselves to make our lives easier and our work easier. I'm talking about social heuristics that are affecting everything that we do all the time. They are there. They are automatic reactions, automatic mental shortcuts that we use that are most of the time very valuable, highly intelligent systems, but sometimes we need to suppress them and we need to overcome them in order to make even better decisions. So we're starting off with value congruence, and that's just a fancy word that social scientists like to use. It basically means that you are on the same page with your team, preferably with the rest of your organization on some higher level, but especially with the rest of your team. The thing is, we all have values, and we base our behavior on these values that we have. And if these values are not aligned, well, you can guess what happens then. And values are all sorts of different things. It means that you have shared goals, shared definitions of done, shared metrics, shared standards, shared languages, shared context, shared boundaries, that you are on the same page with the rest of your team. Because you as a team have to decide how you are going to make this thing work, how you're going to complete the task. We are all familiar with the anti-patterns of value congruence. We are all heading in completely different directions, not really know what we're doing, or we are being stuck in meetings all day trying to be as aligned as possible and not getting any actual work done. This is familiar probably, but it's not what we want. These are not ideal situations. So I think what we should do, or what would make it easier to create that shared sense of reality, is be autonomous as a team. I'm not going to tell you how to create autonomous teams, because there are people with way more knowledge about that, and it will be a separate talk. But I'm just going to focus on shared sense of reality, because I think that's really important. And I think if you, as a team, are autonomous, you can create your own little shared sense of reality. You can create your own little bubble, your own language, definitions of done, goals, you can make sure that you are on the same page with your team. It's up to you as a team to reflect on that regularly and to make sure that everyone is still on the same page after a few days, few weeks, few months, whatever. So I think that that's where we should focus on. We should try to be autonomous in some way as a team in order to create that shared sense of reality, in order to make that even better. But where do we start? I mean, that's hard, right? And I think that we should start with dependencies, because if I'm depending on you, then I'm not autonomous by default. So no matter in what structure you are working or what way your team is structured, I think we should start with minimizing dependencies, one way or another. But that requires that we will have to put in some real effort to really understand the entire domain that we're working in. And that's hard. So if we want to be autonomous, we need to be independent. And if we need to be independent, then what we need is really some domain expertise. We need to know in what domain we are working in, what the domain contains, what we are working on, why are we doing what we're doing. And there are lots of things that you can do. Event storming can probably help you with that. That's just one example, and there are plenty of experts here, so go to them. But the thing is, there is no silver bullet. But we have to think about what we're doing. And I know that having this shared sense of reality is really important. So I'm just going to explore a few scenarios, a few things that I'm seeing that I see happening in organizations that might make us think. The first thing that I want to discuss is domains. Are we going to organize our teams around business domains or technical domains? And both have advantages, of course, but when it comes to creating that shared sense of reality, I believe that that's easier to do when you are organized around business domains. And simply because there will be a better fit with the rest of the organization, its goals, its needs. It will also help smoothen the conversation between business and IT. And that's something that we all want to do, right? I mean, as long as we're talking about business and IT, we are not on the same page. We are not living in a shared sense of reality. So it will help us in talking the same language, speaking the same language, being on the same page. And that will help us make less biased decisions. And we'll get back to that later. Because the next thing I was thinking about was, well, what kind of people do we need? And again, unfortunately, we don't have a blueprint on that. But I like this perspective. It's called T-shaped profiles. And it really helps me making sense of everything, and it's structuring things, and I need that. So this helps me. It says that you can have either in-depth knowledge on the business domains and broader knowledge on technologies, or the other way around. And this is very helpful. And this also made me think about how we, as let's call it professionals, present ourselves. Because very often, we present ourselves as tech specialists. I am a front-end developer. I am a Java expert. I am a back-end engineer. Or we market ourselves as tech generalists. I am a full-stack developer. But we almost never present ourselves as domain experts. And I think that's a little bit weird because we need these domain experts. I don't have an answer. It's just something that I'm seeing in the industry. If you have any ideas about this, then please do come talk to me after this talk because I really want to know why this is happening and how we should change it. But this thing also has a lot to do with how we make decisions, because a lot of the time we don't know why we're doing what we're doing. Why are we using microservices? Why are we using Agile? Most of the time, that's because, well, someone said, I have an opinion, or this just feels good, or I'm familiar with this. I know how to do this. We are going to do this. It doesn't mean it's necessarily the best solution for your problem at that point. So if you have in-depth knowledge on the business domains, if you have this domain expertise, then you will be better able to first formulate the problem, define the problem, and then, because you have a broad knowledge on technologies, you can make a less biased decision. You can make a less biased decision and pick the right solution for your problem. Before you head towards an existential crisis, I am not saying that everyone in your team should have a T-shaped profile like the one we just saw with in-depth knowledge on business domains. I'm just saying that the team as a whole, if you want to create that shared sense of reality, it's helpful to be T-shaped with in-depth knowledge on the business domains, because you need that expertise. And of course you need tech specialists, and of course you need tech generalists, but you also need to have this domain expertise. And that's something that we should be focusing on. The second thing that we are going to discuss today is sense making. How are we making sense of the world? And we are doing that all the time. We are doing that constantly. We are getting so much information and impulses thrown at us on a daily basis that if we would have to process that deliberately, we would go crazy and we would have no time left to do anything else. So luckily we have strategies, and luckily we have very smart mechanisms that can help us. For example, heuristics, but that's part of how we're making sense of the world, so that's the third part of this talk. But first, sense making. Lots of perspectives here. I particularly like 2 of them, because I think we can combine them. And if we combine these perspectives, then that leaves me with 2 sort of worlds. And then I can decide in which of these 2 worlds I'm operating, and if I should benefit from heuristics or if I should overcome them. So I hope that will work for you. I'm going to take you through that right now. The first perspective might be familiar to some of you. Thinking, Fast and Slow, from Daniel Kahneman. If you haven't read the book, please do, because this is a very interesting book, and it will give you a lot of insight on yourself, on your team, and how your brain works, basically. In short, Kahneman says that we have 2 systems. We have a system 1 and we have a system 2. 95% of the time, we are using system 1. And that's a highly intelligent system, because it allows us to not really think about everything. At least we think that we're not thinking about it. Our brains have so much knowledge and information and data in our heads, and they can just, by using heuristics and other mechanisms, we can retrieve everything and we do not have to think about everything. If I would ask you, can you explain to me every single step and every single decision that you had to make to get here this morning? A lot of it you're just doing automatically. You're just doing it because you know how to do it, because your brain is trained. That's your system 1. It's a very intelligent system. Bless you. And because we are focusing, well, we are using our system 1 95% of the time, we have 5% left to spend with our system 2. And we use our system 2 for the rational problems, for the real problems. To illustrate that, if I would ask you 2 plus 2, 4. That's an automatic reaction. It's system 1. If I would ask you 2 plus 2 times 133 minus 27 plus 3, that gets a little bit difficult. So that's where you need your system 2. So we have time to spend time on these difficult problems because we have our system 1, because we can rely on these heuristics. So it's a really, really effective system. The other perspective is the Cynefin model, and I'm never sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Google said it was Cynefin, so we're going with Cynefin. And it says we have 4 domains. We have the obvious domain, and there is a clear relation between cause and effect, and it's like, it's one of those problems. And you act based on best practices, because you've seen this problem before, you know what to do. Then there's the complicated domain, and there is still a clear relation between cause and effect, but you have to be an expert in order to make sense of it and to make the right decision. Then there's the complex domain. That's a very interesting one, and we are operating in this one a lot. Everything we do in a complex domain changes that domain, and we can only understand that in retrospect. So we could have never known beforehand what the right or the best decision would have been. But that's not a problem, because in this domain you can also safely fail. You can try out new things. You can include the feedback that you're getting from that situation because you changed the domain, and you can put that into a next release or a next whatever. So you can safely fail here. Oh. And then there's the chaotic domain, and that's where all hell breaks loose. Chaos is the bug that brought your site down on the day of release, and we all love that. What we do here is we act. We make sure that we get this thing under control to some extent, and we move on. And here's the beauty. I think we can combine these 2 perspectives, and that leaves us with 2 worlds. I think it leaves us with, on the one hand, a world with a lot of known risks, complicated domains, where we could and should use our system 2. And we can use calculation there. We can weigh alternatives. We can see our options. We can really use calculation to calculate risks and stuff. We can really use our system to think rationally about the problem to make the right decision. And then there are situations where calculation is not enough, where there is so much uncertainty, and where there are complex domains where we need something more, where we need smarter strategies. And that's where we can rely on heuristics. So it's up to us to determine in which of these 2 worlds we are operating. And then that will help us guiding, like, can I rely on my heuristics, or should I overcome them and really use my system 2? So that's what we're going to explore in the 3rd part of this talk with social heuristics. And very often, people have a little bit of a negative association with these kind of heuristics. They say, these silly things that you should never use, where you have to make an important decision. I don't agree. I think that heuristics help us make the best decisions of our lives. We just need to know how we can recognize them and recognize if they are working for us or if they are working against us. But especially in complex domains with a lot of uncertainties, we should and we could rely on these heuristics. So I want to talk about 3 heuristics today. I think they are, you will be recognizing them. If you want to read more, if you want to know more about this, then the book of Daniel Kahneman is a really, really good recommendation. But we are going to talk about these 3. The availability heuristic, what you see is all there is. Overconfidence, or beware of the experts, that's always a tricky one. And the anchoring effect, or the curse of first impressions. We're starting off with the availability heuristic. And I do not want to be a psychologist here, but we are all suffering from past experiences. I very often find myself in conversations about food, not sure why that is, but that happens. So not that long ago, I was in a restaurant with a friend of mine, and I told her, I'm thinking of having the stuffed mushrooms for appetizers. And she made this face, and she was like, oh, I had mushrooms once in a restaurant, I got really sick, I'm never eating them again. All right, that's the availability heuristic at work. That quick automatic reaction, had mushrooms once, got sick, never eating them again. That's what the availability heuristic is all about, because this is all about you estimating the likelihood of future events to happen based on past experiences and memories. And the easier these past experiences and memories come to mind, the more likely you'll be to estimate that this situation or any future situation will be the same as in your memory. Statistically, that might not be your best effort. But this is all about, like, I can think of it, so it must be important, right? That's what's happening in your brain. And this is happening in our personal lives, but it's also happening in our working lives. So at one of my clients, we were discussing something, and they were like, we need a new application. We are going to buy or build a new application. All right, that makes sense. We could use our system 2 for this, because this is a situation with known risks, complicated domains. We should use our system 2. But we didn't. Very often, system 1 is taking over. And especially in these kind of situations, if we can recognize that, then we can actively address our system 2, and that's what we should be doing. Because when I was comparing this particular situation to a non-software development situation, I find something funny. Let's say I want to buy a new bike. I'm not building a new bike because that's crazy, but I'm buying a new bike. Maybe I need a new bike that gets me from home to work. Maybe I'm going on holiday and I want to cycle up the mountains. Or maybe I want to change careers completely and I want to win the Tour de France. Could happen. These are 3 different problems. And they require 3 different solutions. And what I do in this situation, I first formulate my problem, define my problem, and then I go online or I go to a shop and I actively start seeking for advice, for information to help me. I actively address my system 2 because I'm about to spend quite some money, so it better be worthwhile. But why is that not happening in software development all the time? I mean, in that situation where I'm buying a bike, it seems like the logical thing to do. But in software development, I very often see people jumping to conclusions, relying on system 1 when they should be addressing their system 2. I have a theory why that is, so I'm going to explain that. So we're going back to that situation of that client of mine. And as I said, very often system 1 is taking over, because if you get this information, we need a new application, then immediately you start thinking about past experiences. Oh, please let us don't do this. Or I had a similar situation at my previous job. We did this and this. That really worked. Well, let's do that again. That's all system 1. But we need to rely on system 2 here. And I think that that has a lot to do with that in software development, we are not always overseeing the bigger picture. We are not always seeing the entire domain. And especially if our teams are organized around layers and there are lots of dependencies between these teams, then it's really hard to oversee everything and foresee the impact of your decisions. Whereas as I'm buying a bike, I am overseeing the entire domain. I know what's happening, I'm spending quite some money, I want to make it worthwhile, I am overseeing the entire situation. I think that's why it's really important to do that in software development as well, and to actively address our system 2. We can also benefit from the availability heuristic when it comes to complex domains with a lot of uncertainties. Actually, we can most of the time we can benefit from these heuristics. It's just we have to recognize it, and we need to know in which specific situations we need to overcome it. But let's say we are building a new product, and we as a team, we are facing some uncertainties. We are facing desirability and usability uncertainties. Will the customers find value in the idea, and will the solution we build be something our customers want to use? These are fair questions, and we need something more than calculation here. And that's the beauty of the availability heuristic, because we as a team, we build a lot of products already. We know what we're doing. We have gathered so much information, so much feedback, and so much customer interaction that we kind of know what our customers want and what they would probably like. So in this case, if you can come up with it, then yes, it probably is important, because the availability heuristic helps you retrieve all that information inside your head and lets you make a fast and effective decision, instead of overthinking everything. Because if you would have to go through all of that information deliberately, you will not be getting to building the actual product, because you simply won't have time to do that. And when I was preparing this talk, I came across this tweet from Nick June. Where do the best product ideas come from? And it says, talking to customers frequently and the teams who build the products. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. I think that this has a lot to do with the availability heuristic. The team who is building the product is getting so much customer interaction, directly or indirectly. They are gathering so much data that we should trust them, that if they come up with an idea, then it's probably important. And if some executive or some accountant or salesperson says, we need to do this and this because I think that works, we should trust the team who's actually building the product, because they have the most information available, and they can let the availability heuristic just retrieve everything and come up with the best idea. Second heuristic, overconfidence, or beware of the experts. This is always tricky because people always think that I don't like experts, but I do. But if I would ask you, do you consider yourself to be a better driver than the average person? And don't worry, you do not have to answer this. But this was actual American research. And sure, it's American, so maybe the numbers would be a little bit lower here, I don't know. But still, 93% of all American drivers consider themselves to be a better driver than the average person. The same happened when they were asked about intelligence. That might explain a few things, but I'm not going there in this talk. So this has everything to do with overconfidence, because overconfidence has everything to do with what the mind believes it knows. We are way more likely to ask ourselves, how do I feel about this? Instead of what do I think about this? So we are way more likely to actively ask our system 1 for advice. And that's not always the best idea. I think there's something weird going on in general with confidence, because on the one hand, we know that overconfidence can harm us and that we should overcome it. On the other hand, if I'm walking into a bookshop or if I'm scrolling through my LinkedIn timeline, I'm seeing all these articles and all these books about boosting my confidence and being more confident. And I don't know about you, but almost every woman that I know has been reading or is reading Why Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. And I haven't read it, but I think that the essence is about standing up for yourself and start living the awesome life that you deserve. Something like that, I don't know. So I think, where's the middle ground? Where's the compromise? There should be some middle ground that we could operate in. But that requires us to really reflect on ourselves and to consider the possibility that we might be wrong. And we don't like that. It requires us to feel uncomfortable, and we don't like doing that. But that's exactly what we need to do in order to overcome overconfidence. In some cases, we should overcome overconfidence in complicated domains with a lot of known risks. So, let's say we are facing legacy modernization challenges, and the years continue to go by, and the platform that our technology was built on remains unchanged. That will leave us with a few problems in a few years. What your system 1, or overconfidence, will try to do here, it will try to make you feel good about yourself and to make you feel comfortable, because that's what overconfidence does. It will tell you, oh, you'll be fine. Look at the brilliant people you have. Look at everything that they've already done. You'll be fine, and you'll deal with that in a few years. If your system 2 isn't start whining automatically, actively address it, because this is a situation for system 2. Known risks, complicated designs, complicated domains, use system 2. Another thing that's related to overconfidence is planning. We all suck at planning. We are horrible at it. Projects never go as planned, and we can never seem to get it right. That has a lot to do with overconfidence, because we very often tend to underestimate the length of time it will take to complete a task. We are very often likely to underestimate complexity, and that is a very dangerous thing. Let's say I'm sitting at my desk and a colleague walks up to me and says, hey, I need this and this, when can it be done? And I say, 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Where did that came from? I didn't look at my calendar, I didn't ask additional questions, I'm not really sure what he wants. 2 weeks. What happened here? 2 things. First of all, the availability heuristic just brought up some memories about a similar situation. That was about 2 weeks, so probably I'll be able to do this in 2 weeks as well. Second thing, overconfidence. This person comes up to me, considers me to be an expert. I'm flattered, I don't want to look stupid. 2 weeks, that's fine. But then 1.5 weeks later, you think, yeah, that was a bit optimistic. Maybe I should have asked additional questions. So that can be a problem, right? I mean, so what we should do in order to overcome this overconfidence thing, and if you want to get realistic estimations out of someone, instead of optimistic estimations, we should try to focus on how we are asking questions. We should not focus on time periods, but we should focus on effort. How much effort is required to complete this and this task, instead of, I need this and this, when can it be done? And that's how you can overcome overconfidence and get realistic estimations out of someone. A last thing that we need to be aware of when it comes to overconfidence are experts. And they are everywhere, and they are the worst, sorry. But if an expert is in a situation and that situation provides them with cues, then an expert loves that, because those cues give them access to all the information inside their heads about this specific topic. And they can come up with a lot of arguments. And that is sometimes a problem, because the thing is, you can always come up with supportive arguments for your decisions. You can always find supportive arguments, especially if you are a so-called expert. So even if you think you are relying on your system too, because look at all the supportive arguments that I can come up with, you are actually still relying on your system one, because you can only come up with supportive arguments. And here's a very important note, so if you weren't paying attention, do for a few minutes. There is a very important, very subtle difference between being a true expert and relying on expert intuition. If you are a true expert, then you can come up with counter-arguments and you can still feel good about your decision. You can force yourself to be uncomfortable and still feel good about your decision. If you are relying on expert intuition, you can either not come up with counter-arguments, or it will make you so uncomfortable that you start doubting your decision. And in that case, you can also hire dart-throwing monkeys. So it's up to us to determine if we are relying on expert intuition or if we are real experts. And that forces us to be uncomfortable, and it's not fun. I promise you, it's not fun, but that's what you need in order to overcome this thing and to help you make better decisions. We can also benefit from overconfidence in a lot of cases. It can also help us. We are still working on this new product, and we were facing these desirability issues. Will our customers find value in this idea? We just saw that if we can come up with the idea as a product team, then it probably is a good idea. What overconfidence can do, it can help you get started. It can help you get going. Feel good about your decision and just get started and get building that product. Because if you won't have overconfidence, or confidence, let's call it confidence because it's a less negative association, you will never start building the product because you are always overanalyzing and overthinking everything. So in this case, you can use the confidence or overconfidence to just get going. And that's a very valuable thing. The last heuristic that we're going to talk about is the anchoring effect, or the curse of first impressions. We tend to rely too heavily on the first piece of information that we encounter. And that can be a problem. Let's say I'm getting a new colleague and this person walks up to me and I just don't like him. Nope, not my person. Even though this person is the biggest expert in something, if I don't like this person, I probably won't ask him for advice and I won't be taking any advice from him. That makes me a horrible human being, right? Except that it doesn't, because this is how we're wired. We think in terms of functions and job titles, but we act in terms of relationships. Relationships are the single most important thing in our working lives and our personal lives. We base everything on that. So first impressions can really be a curse. Because if I don't like that person right away, I need to put in a lot of effort to change that. I need to put in a lot of effort to lift that anchor and drop it somewhere else. But in some cases, we have to do that. So let's say we as a company, we started off a few years ago, well, maybe 15 years ago, and we used the market of that time as our anchor. Customer needs of that time, business needs of that time, that's our anchor. But now we're 15 years later, and we are still using that anchor to evaluate every decision that we're making. That might not be the right thing to do, because the industry changed, the market changed. So we have to lift our anchor and drop it somewhere else. But you have to do that as a team, and that is a very difficult thing to do. So every once in a while, it's good with your team to reflect on all the anchors that you're using deliberately and see if you need to change some things. Anchoring is also a very important source of inaccurate effort estimates. Let's say I am discussing a project with a colleague of mine, and we're discussing when this can be done. And mind how I'm asking that question. I'm not focusing on effort but on time periods, but this is a realistic situation. And I say, well, 3 weeks. And my colleague is saying, was about to say 1 week, but because I'm saying 3 weeks, she's like, okay, I should move a little bit to the middle. I should compromise a bit. And she says 2 or 2.5 weeks. Even she was about to say 1 week. I am dropping the anchor at 3, and she's moving towards an anchor. We are biasing each other all the time in our teams. That happens a lot. And we should overcome that in some cases, because that can be a dangerous thing, because we're all just moving to the middle, being comfortable in the middle, and that's not always a good thing. So let's say we are facing a very complex problem, and we think we need ideas. We need radical ideas. So what we're going to do, we're going to organize brainstorm sessions, and we're going to generate radical ideas. The widest variety as possible between groups. We put people in a room and we let them come up with radical ideas. Here's an interesting trade-off about autonomous teams with T-shaped profiles with in-depth knowledge on the business domains. Are we still there? They are diverse. These teams are diverse. And if you put diverse teams into a room and let them talk to each other, they will bias each other. They will compromise and they won't come up with radical ideas. If you want to generate radical ideas, which is a challenge in itself, but if you want to do that, you should put homogeneous groups into a room. And then afterwards you can combine and discuss everything, but homogeneous groups will come up with more radical ideas because they won't be biasing each other because they are not diverse. If you want to organize brainstorm sessions with these diverse groups, don't let them talk to each other. Just use Post-its or whatever, but don't let them talk to each other from the beginning, because that can really bias everything, dropping an anchor, and that will not leave you with brilliant ideas, probably. The anchoring effect is also a good thing, because what it does, it helps us move on. And in a lot of situations, the anchors that we are using are okay, they're just good. They help us move on. They help us unconsciously evaluate trade-offs in the situation, and it helps us formulate a judgment based on the anchor that we're having, and then we can move on, which leaves us with space in our heads, and it won't make us go crazy. So let's say that we are still building that new product, and we are facing viability uncertainties. Does this product make sense within our wider business portfolio? Our existing business portfolio is our anchor, and it's a proven anchor because we are still here as a company. We're still making profit. We have a pretty good idea of what our customers want. So this is a proven anchor. So who else is better to judge if this makes sense within our wider business portfolio than the team who is building that product? We saw that based on the availability heuristic, we can come up with good ideas. Overconfidence can help us get going, get started. The anchoring effect just helps us move on, make easy and effective and quick decisions. That's a very valuable thing. We are heading towards the end of this talk. There are actually 2 things that I would like you to remember after today. The first thing is that I hope that this distinction between 2 worlds will help you. Trust me, in the beginning, it will lead to frustration and a lot of swearing, and it's hard. But if you are able to recognize heuristics, if you are able to determine in which of these 2 worlds you are operating, and if you can benefit from heuristics or if you should overcome them, then that will really help you make sense of the world and make better decisions and become that social technical developer. So the second thing, or basically maybe it's what I'm saying in general, is trust your gut, but sometimes think twice. And I want to end this philosophical or social flood with a quote that I really like. And maybe this is the actual problem. So that kind of marks the end of my talk. I will be here for lunch, obviously. If you have any questions, if you want to discuss anything further, feel free to come up to me, talk to me. I would love to stay in touch anyway. So feel free to connect, to discuss something. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you will enjoy the rest of the day. But thank you for now. Questions?
I have a question, but I have a remark.
Yes.
If you're wondering if you're bringing value to this, that's something you do. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really nice to hear. Thank you. That's always, yeah. There was a second time that I'm talking just about the social stuff, so it was kind of, yeah. I will, thank you. Any other questions or remarks? All right. Well, that's fine. Then we can get lunch early. So, thank you.